Now let's bring in the group chat. Lizzie O'Leary is here, host of What Next? TVD at Slate Magazine. Joel Payne, Democratic strategist and chief communications officer for MoveOn. And Ron Insana, MS Now contributor and publisher of The Message of the Markets on Substack. It's a must read. Okay, Ron, let's look at the clock. It took the Obama administration almost 2 years to negotiate their deal, the JCPOA, with Iran. Trump thinks he can get this thing done in 60 days. I'm having flashbacks of Liberation Day and the tariffs where like every other 2 more weeks. What do you think's happening here?
Listen, I mean, on the first point of Israel and Hezbollah, I mean, I doubt that the ceasefire holds. And again, I think it breaks the first paragraph of the MOU. And I don't know that we even get to the point where negotiations begin. I'm not convinced that this is going to go forward. And again, when you harken back to the JCPOA and the fact that it took 2 years to put together a 150-page document, working off a 2-page, outline and trying to get through all the highly technical details about dealing with highly enriched uranium, their missile program, which is not even on the list, quite frankly. I'm not convinced that this is going to get off the ground in a meaningful way. And I also don't think that the diplomatic groundwork has been laid for an ultimate agreement to be reached. This has just been done effectively on the back of a napkin. And I do think that Bibi Netanyahu does not want to see this go through. And I'm concerned that he will undermine it at every step along the way.
We cannot compare Trump's MOU, though, to Obama's deal since it's so early. But the Post reports the following. The context has changed, and I think this is really important. Iran's nuclear know-how has grown, and it's negotiating after months of war. Their military capabilities have eroded, and, of course, their supreme leader assassinated. So in some ways, Joel, Iran is in a stronger position today, and in some ways much weaker. And, of course, no surprise, President Trump says he's most powerful, never been in a position as strong as he is at this very moment today.
But the actions of Trump and his administration have advanced Iran's leverage and has advanced their ability to control negotiations that really they have no business being in the driver's seat of. And this was wholly predictable. I mean, this is something that everybody around Donald Trump, even the people in his administration, generals and folks in his national security orbit tried to tell him. This is what the public tried to tell him. I imagine there were a lot of voices in that Republican Senate and House caucus tried to tell him. So the fact that Trump is kind of realizing that now. I mean, he's the last person to the party on this. We all knew that this was going to happen. I think the other thing I would just add here, too, is you add the cross pressure, what you and Ron talked about with what's happening with, Israel clearly testing the bounds of this MOU. Combine that with the fact that on Trump's own team, people don't want this deal. I mean, it's very clear there's a lot of tension within his national security orbit now. There's a lot of tension within the neocon universe on the Republican side. Pressure's going to bust pipes, and I'm not sure how this deal lasts all of that cross pressure.
Let's talk about the optics for a moment, because Trump literally signed the MOU at the Palace of Versailles, and I want to remind our audience of his fascination with royalty and pomp and circumstance over the years. Watch this.
I'm delighted to present to you, as a personal gift, the original bell which hung on the conning tower of your valiant namesake. God bless both our countries.
It's signed now. It's signed in Versailles.
Get this man to a castle. Gold, mirrors, velvet, all his favorites.
Get this man to a history book. I feel like maybe he should have realized that signing a treaty in Versailles has some not-so-great precedents, right? Does he go back and look at 1919? That was not exactly the model for creating a long-standing peace. I kind of like, oh, buddy, you got to actually pay attention to history or we are doomed to repeat it. But I also think what Joel is saying is really important. I would like to know why the vice president so loudly and so provocatively went after Israel in public, on camera. Is he trying to undermine the president? Is he angry at Netanyahu? That was incredibly dramatic, and it clearly did not land well with the Israeli government.
Steph, can I add one thing? It's very clear to me, Trump is out. He's done with this. He's turned the page on this long.
He's done with this war.
He's done with this war.
Yeah, that's exactly why the markets have soared, because they're like, he's done, he's finished, because investors aren't thinking about what the impact are. But stay, sorry, I interrupted.
With any responsibility for what happens after the fact. He signed his treaty. He's done his pomp and circumstance, as your package just expertly laid out. And he's done, also, he looks awful. And I'm not saying that just as an aesthetic. I'm saying that looking back to the previous president we had with Joe Biden and the loss of confidence in American leadership in part because of that, Donald Trump has not actually looked like the bold, dynamic
I'm
leader
just going to say, though,
publicly.
But that's also, you can take any president, though. Any president from beginning to end, they're not looking so strong. And
Steph, he looked pretty rough this week.
I want to go back to what Lizzie said about signing the Treaty of Versailles in 1919. So John Maynard Keynes, very famous economist, wrote a book called The Economic Consequences of the Peace and laid out the fact that the Allies were putting war reparations on Germany, effectively set the stage for World War II.
Absolutely.
World War I and World War II were actually the same war, continued over a period of time. And to a certain extent, whether it's in Versailles or elsewhere, the conditions around which the U.S. has agreed to this memorandum and maybe future talks may well establish the groundwork for a future war, given that Iran is getting stronger and not weaker. This is not unconditional surrender by any stretch of the imagination and leaves them in a position unlike Germany in 1919, where they went through a depression, rearmed, but it leaves them in well, there's certain similarities, but it leaves them in a position that they can challenge the region, they can challenge Israel, they can, again, as the IRGC warned this morning, shut down the Strait of Hormuz immediately if Lebanon and Hezbollah and Israel go back to war. So this is in some ways, very similar to that experience, and I don't think the irony is lost on anybody who knows anything about military history.
the president can say it was an unconditional surrender. It wasn't. It wasn't. J.D. Vance isn't even saying that. He's just saying it's a win for the American people. The American people know that it's not. Before the deal was signed, right, there's a new AP poll out there that Trump's approval rating on the war was still very low, and the uncertainty continues. How is all of this going to land with voters?
Well, clearly, this is why Trump is doing the it's all over, we're fine, because he wants to see the rebound in oil markets and the consequent rebound in gas prices and consumer confidence that go along with that. And I guess the question for Trump, for voters, and really for world peace is, does any of this hold? I mean, by the time I got up and came here, things had changed several times. You know, while I was on the subway, I don't know that unless you can deliver voters a lasting peace, which I do not think they can do in the 60-day framework. Obviously, they want that so that it comes before the midterms, that people are going to feel satisfied. We just went on a military adventure for what?
Well, J.D. Vance might not be going to Switzerland today. He is still the person slated to be the front man for these negotiations. And even when we've heard from him in the last 24 hours, the details on the deal are vague at first, and then they're misleading. So if you're Iran, and I'm not defending Iran at all, but if you're Iran, you can't possibly think he's going to show up to the table as an honest broker. And again, I'm not saying they are, but what's in the deal and what he's presenting to the American people are not aligned.
Well, it's so transparent that Trump does not have any confidence in this deal. I mean, this guy will put his name on an underperforming casino. He'll put his name on the side of a building, but he really apparently won't put his name on this deal. And it's because he fundamentally, I think, doesn't believe in the core of it. He believes in, again, the need to get out. I don't think he believes in this deal. And I think that this deal feels more like a weather balloon to see what neocons and Republicans and people in his coalition will say. And that's why the guy that they're fingering right now is J.D. Vance. They are pointing the finger right at him, and they're saying he's responsible. That's why Marco Rubio's backed away from it. That's why Trump has kept as much arm's length distance from this deal as possible, because they want Vance to own this. And I'm very surprised that Vance would actually allow himself to be put in this position.
Especially
a guy who
the guy wants to run in 2020.
Allegedly.
Well, also, I mean, it's not in his portfolio to negotiate international agreements. That is.
Wait.
Everybody
Whoa. Did you think it was in Jared Kushner and Steve?
No. I don't mean it that way. I mean, the Secretary of State Marco Rubio would most normally be the front person.
Yeah, except he thinks like this deal stinks.
If you looked at his face,
I'm gonna stick with Venezuela and Cuba.
Yeah, I get it. When you looked at his face the other day, standing with Donald Trump, there wasn't even a hint of a smile. In fact, it looked quite concerned. But it's odd to, in a certain way, set up the vice president of the United States to be the front man on this. I've not
unless Donald Trump is the president and you've watched either Apprentice or Survivor.
Yeah, no, I understand that. He was never on Survivor.
No, but I'm just saying, like the way this game is being played.
I know it's not a game, though. That's the crazy thing about it.
Except that's how it's being approached.
I know, but this is real. This is real stuff.
It for real is.